Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order and have a roll call.
Weedman.
Here.
Mack.
Here.
LaCroix.
Here.
Mesco.
Here.
Northern.
Here.
Parkinson. Here.
And we do have quorum and do the pledge. I'd like to have an approval to motion to approve the agenda.
So move.
Maybe new team second.
Mesco.
Aye.
Mack.
Aye.
Weedman.
Aye.
Northern.
Aye.
LaCroix.
Aye.
Parkinson.
Aye.
Okay, next is up to Chris, is the public budget hearing.
All right. Welcome to the annual budget presentation for fiscal year 2017-2018. Let's just jump right into it. And we're actually going to start by talking about last year's a little bit. Our revenues versus our expenses. And this is all pre-audited numbers, but this is where we're anticipating winding up, plus or minus a small amount for some audited journal entries that have to be made. Last year what we did is we actually projected a surplus in the education fund. We came in at a fairly significant deficit. Part of that reason is due to some uncaptured revenues in the special ed area, which will be recaptured again this year. The other part is due to the high number of outplay students that came in. Actually, our special education budget jumped by about $600,000 last year over what it had been in the previous 4 or 5 years. So we had a little bit of an increase there. Also, we didn't capture some of the federal categorical grant monies and state categorical grant monies. Most of those grants are actually written into our 16-17 annual financial report, but there were certain items that we didn't receive all year long, and myself and the auditors felt like we shouldn't put it in just because we're not quite sure where the state stands with dispersing or dispensing that money. So that's where a lot of the education fund deficit came from. Operations and maintenance came in a little bit better than expected. We anticipated over $100,000 surplus. It's at $210,000. The rest of them came in fairly in line with what our expectations were. Our overall surplus deficit for last year, we're looking at about $165,000 deficit. Like I said, that could be shifted a little bit once the auditors sift through everything and give us their final opinion, and we make the final journal entries. If we jump into this year's an overview of the revenues, we always start off with the levy, and the levy is going to be a combination of the 2015 and 2016 CPI. The levy for 2016 did come in at the 0.7% increase. We're anticipating a levy at the 2.1%, which was the CPI from 2016 of last year. So that's what we're figuring into this year's budget. We did have higher than normal growth. New construction in our boundaries, 1.42 million. Typically where it's been is right around a little bit less than $500,000 per year. So this is about 3 times the amount of that. That's going to actually increase our tax dollars by a little bit, not as much as we would like. And we just missed out on the U-Haul facility that's right over there in Washington, which was about a $4 million venture. But you know, that's the way it goes. One of the largest things this year, as mentioned in the previous board meetings, is the new evidence-based model is replacing general state aid. It has been confirmed. We have been getting payments right now for a base funding minimum level. That level is coming in to what our general state aid was last year, which is around the $9.5 million mark, which is fantastic because initially, if they had not done this, I had actually budgeted for a $1 million loss. of that revenue. It would have been come in right around 8.6, maybe a little bit less than that. So that is great for us. I included in the budget as well, there have been some preliminary numbers that have come out. Now, they're a few months old, and they were before all of the vetoes and all of the revotes and the reworking of Senate Bill 1 to Senate Bill 1947. But this year I have hope that we're actually going to, what they say is going to happen is going to happen. So I increased our evidence-based funding by $300,000, as was the one of the spreadsheets that the state gave to us. So instead of the 9.572, we're looking at closer to 9.8 in the budget. Categorical grants are going to increase by $760,000. A lot of that is the recapture of last year's special ed facilities grant. Also, I took out Title II revenues during the last preliminary budget presentation. I added them back into the budget. Looks like we're going to be receiving those as well, which is great for professional development for the district. And then the final one is a bit of a guessing game right now. What's going to happen with lunch revenues? I just conservatively I chose 20%. I know the numbers have gone up. So far it looks like they've been about 20%. They seem to keep rising and rising. So I don't know where we're gonna wind up, but what it comes down to is that the revenues and the expenses are going to wash out anyways, so it's not necessarily going to hurt the budget all that much. Looking at historical revenues, this just gives you a spreadsheet and shows you from the 11-12 school year. It's graphed. With the lighting here, it's probably not the easiest to look at. But our local revenues are going to come in at $37 million, state at $14 million, federal at $1.7 million. This means that the state's going to be responsible for 27% of our revenues, while local revenues are going to be at 70%. That's in line, plus or minus 1%, where we've been in the last few years, so it's not terribly out of line. The state's actually increased by 1%, up to 27%. Last year it was at 26%. A lot of that has to do with, like I said, the categoricals that are going to be recaptured, and also the evidence-based model. And if you look at the bar graph on the side, you can just see how local revenues have been slowly rising. The state's has been up and down. And one of the caveats of that evidence-based model is that we're now at a base funding minimum. So we shouldn't actually see decreases in revenue from the state, barring state budgets and the monies that they're allowed to pay us or that get released to us. And then the federal kind of stays, it goes up and down a little bit, but it stays pretty level. If you take it and break it down by fund, I've gone with the 2016-17 preliminary audit figures to the 2017-2018 figures. And the majority of the revenue is going to go into the education fund. That's where the majority of the expenses happen, including your salaries, most of your salaries and your benefits. Anticipating a 4.4% increase. And that is due to the increase in the levy, which is going to happen, and also due to the increase in those categorical grants. Everything else has stayed fairly flat. We're talking about fees. We have not changed our fee structure. We have not changed any type of intramural fee structure or rental fees for the year. So everything else, you know, is going to be within a small range of where it came in the prior year, and then you take the average of the years before that. Operations and maintenance has gone up by $241,000. That's due to the levy. We've got a large construction project that we're trying to fund. So there's an increase in the operation and maintenance levy. Transportation, there's also an increase in the transportation fund. Came in last year at a deficit of about $146,000, which is going to leave our transportation fund with a small balance. This is probably going to add a little bit money to that and will keep us on the positive side. The rest of the fund, Social Security, IMRF, that basically tailors what your education fund is going to do in terms of salaries. Salaries are going to come in, and it's just a mathematical figure that goes to each individual and each individual salary. Capital projects, it's a decrease in this fund. Thinking there's going to be a decrease in impact fees, and I'm also thinking if impact fees come in, I might actually put them in the operations and maintenance fund instead of the capital projects fund. You can use them at the buildings. We'll have evidence that we actually do use them at the buildings, and if you wind up with, you know, after 4 or 5 years, say $6,000 to $7,000 for one school, or even $3,000 to $4,000 for one school in the capital projects fund, it's not necessarily going to be that large of a project. So it's going to make things a little bit difficult. Working cash and tort are coming in about the same range. Yes?
What's the next major O&M project?
We've got a couple that we're looking at. We're looking at redoing a parking lot, potentially at Prairie View, which is a significant sized parking lot. And then also on the board, our next two roofing projects, I would say the next one is going to be Meadowview, which is coming down the line. So that's not too far out as well. So you're looking at probably $700,000 projects. Everything gets determined at the end of the year. Do we need to do it for the following year? Do we not need to do it, depending on how well they hold up? Keith will do an evaluation and see which one of those two is in the most need.
And then impact fees are determined by those school boundaries?
Impact fees are determined by, yeah, where the students are going to come, so housing comes up, and then, so for some of them, they're going to go to a K-4 plus a 5-6 plus a 7-8, so we divide it up proportionally there. We move on to expenditures. The increases, there's an increase in here. It's going to be determined officially after negotiations have been completed. We're not quite there yet, but we're hoping it'll be completed soon. We do have knowns of the increases in medical insurance. Our census is finished for the year. We might have a few people come in or leave the district, but for the most part, it's set. We've got 4.7 and 2.2% increases. For medical, dental PPO increase of 3%. The HMO actually didn't go up at all. Workers' compensation decrease of 19.3%, which is great. We've had some large experiences that happened 6 years ago come off of our books, so it actually decreased our workers' compensation. Property casualty still continues to rise, and then payments to CEDAW are up as well. Transportation was negotiated at 3%, and then now we're talking about gas increases. We said this last year, gas increase of roughly 22 to 27%. We anticipated having a normal year in the wintertime. Once again, we had a warm year. So same thing this year. We're not anticipating the winter to be as warm as it was this year. So our cooperative has collectively come together and anticipated a 23% increase. They also approximate increases in electricity. 7% is the word that we're getting. Roof replacement at GMS is going to be a $500,000 increase to operations and maintenance. That's $500,000 more than we spent on our capital or our summer projects from the year before, which was roughly $200,000. So that's why we're going to see an increase in our O&M expenses. And then increased lunch sales. Same thing with the revenues. Take a look at prior year pre-audit finalization to anticipated budget for this year. You can see changes in the education fund at 1.43%. Most of that's going to come with salaries. A little bit's going to come because of the lunches, although our lunch, the amount of lunch sales that we had, especially to what we used to have been declining so much that the impact's not going to be that great. Operations and maintenance is going to increase by about 20%. That's due to the GMS roof that we have, which is very nice, by the way. Transportation, Social Security, IMRF, 3%, 3%. Transportation is mostly due to the contract. Social Security, IMRF, like I said, mimics and mirrors the education fund and mimics salaries. Nothing budgeted for capital projects or working cash. And then tort is, it's just our property casualty insurance. We pay it every year. We pay it in July, so we already know exactly what that's going to be. Then we have our debt service, which is based solely upon our principal and interest debt book. It's scheduled payments that are already known and levied for on our behalf by the county. Those will stay exactly what the debt book says. I put in this on behalf. It's something that we're required to put in. It happens on the revenue side as well. That's money that the government's supposed to flow through us and pay for TRS for the teachers. It never comes through us at all. It's just money that goes directly from the state into the TRS fund. It's almost a guessing game on what it's going to be. It's gone from 7 to 9 to 11. So it's basically something I don't like to even show in a budget because our budget's not going to be $62 million. It's really actually going to be more like $52 million. If you look at how things are broken up in the education fund, this is in the lower left. I broke it down by object, so you can get you see your salary increases at 2.47. benefits closer to 3, and then you've got purchase services, supplies. Capital assets, I know it's a big percentage on the right at 40.23%, but that's the difference between $13,000 and $18,500, which is not much when you're looking at a $52 million, $53 million budget. Non-capitalized assets, same thing. That's just any item that's in between, individually priced is in between $500 or $2,000. So if we have a large need for computers this year that are going to be $1,000 a piece or $800 a piece, that's going to actually drive up what the non-capitalized assets are going to be in terms of expenditures. I put in $85,000. A lot of that actually is coming direct from grants. So I looked through the grants, and whatever our needs were there, which are paid for either through state or federal funds, went right into the budget. And then if we put it all together for this year, revenues versus expenses, you can see the education fund is looking at about a $609,000 surplus. Remember, part of that surplus is going to be funds that were recaptured from last year. You're looking at about $345,000 there, which we traditionally would not get on an annual basis. And then I also put it in the additional $300,000 from general state aid that is more of a hope. Hope's not the right word. It's what is anticipated, but at this point in time is not known. Operations and maintenance is going to, we're looking at a deficit there. That's going to be because of the roofing project that we have. Transportation is going to have a surplus of a little bit over $50,000. That's mostly due to how we're breaking up the levy this year. Social Security IMRF is going to be a negative. We have plenty of fund balance in there, so I don't mind spending down a little bit of that fund balance. It's not necessary that we keep it at the level that it's at. Capital projects and working cash. That capital project money is just interest from the money that's sitting in capital projects right now. And working cash is a product of a very teeny portion coming from the levy, and then after that it's interest on the monies that are sitting in the working cash fund. So the grand total surplus deficit, you're looking at $473,000 surplus. And then you've got our debt service, which I said is basically a product of the county now that we just pay out and we receive levy revenues through. And then the on-behalf payments, which I would really like it if they allowed us to eliminate it from the budget.
We only started doing that a few years ago due to the audit.
Yeah.
The auditor said we should put it in there just so that it's clean.
It was something, yeah, I think it was actually 3 years ago it was turned into law that you had to put it into your budget. Prior to that, it had never been in the budget. We might have started 2 years ago because, well, we did. So, annual financials, this is our history. This is 2009 to the fiscal year 2017, last year pre-audit estimate, and then the projected 2018, which is that last black little highlighted bar on the left-hand side. You can see how each of the funds, how their fund balance has either gone up or gone down within the last 7 or 8 years, and what the anticipation is for the fiscal year 18. Those numbers come directly from the last slide, so you're looking at a $609,000 surplus for the education grant, a $220,000 decrease for the operations and maintenance. More than that, though, you can see what the percentages are for fund balance. Education fund at 26.6%. Operations and maintenance, that's the fund that was way up there. It was above 200% a few years back before we started doing a few large projects. It's coming down, which is fine, because 130% is still a very solid number for your operations and maintenance. Debt service is actually kind of a funny one because it's more of a timing thing when our interest and principal payments actually happen. We don't necessarily have 61% of that fund just sitting in cash waiting. That's going to be, it's not free money at the end. That money is going to get spent on principal and interest. The state and the district, we've all said that, 25% minimum. We'd like 33%, that would be even better. Social Security IMRF is sitting around 40. Your transportation fund, several years back, we actually had to borrow about $500,000 just to make sure that we didn't have a deficit. We borrowed that from working cash, repaid the loan, and then we got things on the right side based on what we did with the levy and how we shifted levy monies around to make sure that we actually didn't have a deficit. Our capital projects, that's 99% impact fees for Park Campus. Working cash fund is, that's our cash flow. That helps us in those months that are later in the year, in the school year, so we don't have a cash flow issue when we're trying to make payroll. And then our tort fund is just for the one sole object, which is our property casualty liability insurance. But you can see where the fund balances, I projected them out to 2018. Education fund is the one that everybody likes to look at. Once upon a time, it was at $11.722 million, and it got as low as $8.1 million, and now we're slowly building it back up, which is what the auditors had suggested. They suggested it was at a point that was almost critical a couple of years back. So we've done a good job of actually making sure that we have a little bit of breathing room. And that will pretty much tell you what the budget looks like in that school.
Can you go back? I think it's 3 slides that would have CDOL on it.
You're looking for something that says
CDOL.
EDOL?
The increase of, the big, yeah, 17-18 expenditure overview. There you go.
Yep.
And halfway down, there's estimated things to see all increase.
Can we predict what that will do next year?
In 18-19?
Yeah.
A lot of it has to do with the number of students that we have that are aging out and the number of students that we have coming in. It's actually we do get quite a bit of transition with some of the kids moving in and out. It's not only that, you're looking at what tuition rates are going to do individually. CDOL will come up and they'll actually give you a little booklet that says this is CDOL, this is what their finances look like, this is what we anticipate for you, based on the numbers that we currently have, and they give us projections.
Go ahead one slide. There was one that had CDOL in a chart, but I don't see it.
On like a graph or a...
Yeah, it was in a table like that.
I don't remember putting one in. You sure it wasn't Social Security IMRF?
No. I just read something there. Okay.
I mean, if you find which...
Do we normally get fluctuations as much as, say, 18-20%? We do, okay.
Because a lot of it depends on enrollment and
Yeah.
what conditions the students may have.
So there's also an element of decreasing enrollment means that each student costs more, right? Because there's a certain amount of CDOL that's fixed and they have to recoup some of that.
But yeah, and then that's why you have,
Enrollments are declining.
there's a lot of interest in when you hear that a district is dropping out of the CDOL cooperative. That always perks up everybody's ears because that has an impact on everybody else who's left.
Whatever happened to our plan to do that? Is that something that we'll consider?
We, at this moment, we're not necessarily looking into it, but I can tell you that it is something that I think we've done, I'll just say yes. How about that? We'll leave it at yes. It's something that we have considered and
You're still looking at, but not.
looking into exiting CEDO.
I could say one thing. And just for, I guess, transparency's sake, I'm on the executive board for CEDO also, as a representative of this board. But the facilities that they have at CEDO, I'm sure that, our students that need that type of facilities, whether it be the pools or the harnesses, it'll be really challenging for us to have some of that equipment. So
Yeah,
we
no,
know
I'm
that
talking
CEDO
about the evaluations.
Yeah.
Just the actual evaluations.
It's,
I get it.
to your point, yes. And I can tell you that there's somebody who's sitting right behind you that is talking about, no.
You no longer do those evaluations?
I'm going back to David's comment.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you. Yeah, that's what I wanted. Okay. So I'll want to.
Your point with needs, what's best for the students, if the facilities have.
I think that's what you was asking about.
Were you talking about the
Yeah,
ECAT?
no, I was pretty much gone all summer, so I feel like I missed out. Sorry.
No, the ECAT. We started that this summer, and
Okay, yes.
and we were the largest user of the ECAT from CEDAW. So several teachers were they were RIF'd, and as we all know, it's always the youngest teachers. So the cost went up for other districts because you've got the, still the more, yes, so yes,
Oh,
we've been
so-
doing
Yeah,
this,
that was
and
after the-
they're doing the
So we don't want
evaluations
that.
right now.
Well, that was after the second year. In the first year, if you had somebody, you know, a lot of them were doing 5 evaluations, something like that, and they decided they could do those on their own, or they could do it through another independent vendor. We had quite a few more than that. And the first year was cost prohibitive for us to actually bring it in ourselves. It wouldn't be the same, but then they rose their prices by 30
Something, yeah.
something
They went
percent.
from like 3,500 to about 4,500 per
Yeah,
application.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
their quantity.
The prices increased, and then it made the decision easy for us to bring it to the district, so.
So, yeah, sorry to raise confusion.
I have a question.
Good, I put it right back on the slide.
So the state aid payments we received last week, those were what the state owed us in arrears?
No,
No.
those were the 2017, 2018 evidence-based funding at the minimum level. So those were part of the $9.5 million,
And this is subject to revision, but only with upside.
only with upside.
They didn't charge payments last year.
Categoricals are still waiting. We're still waiting on,
That's what
yes,
the transportation.
transportation, special education. Anybody else?
So you need to come up with a day.
So, the person standing before you did not, I did not advise, or I didn't tell anybody to put it on the agenda for an action item. And it has to be on the agenda for an action item before I turn it over to the county, before I turn it over to the state. So we're looking for a special, super special board meeting next week.
For like 5 minutes.
It's going to be 5 minutes. It's going to be open, there'll be an action item on the blah, blah, blah as presented at the 20th meeting, and then just we'll vote right away. So I know we've got, the 29th is off limits, and Stephen,
Friday, that's Friday.
that's Friday.
I mean, I wouldn't be able to make Tuesday.
So the 26th.
We get 4 of us together on the 27th?
I can be here on the 27th.
I can as well.
Like what time are we talking?
Like in the evening?
Yeah, I mean, I'm coming from the city, so 6:30 is possible. Or, I
6:30
mean, I guess,
possible? I mean, it's a simple, well, I shouldn't say it's
my
simple.
train gets in
We-
at 5:45.
If we can get 4 during the day, if not, obviously evenings would be fine too.
This 5
I'm
minutes, I
open
can
on Tuesday,
always,
Thursday.
I'm in training, but I could stop and break and run over there. I'll work right down the street from
I can come anytime.
I can come anytime on that day.
27th, 27th, and 27th?
During,
Not during the day.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, why don't we tentatively schedule something for, what works best for you?
11 o'clock.
11 o'clock?
Didn't that work for you,
11 o'clock.
Tom? Okay.
And then we can tentatively say if 11 is off the table, then the evening works better for most people. So perhaps have a backup plan at 6 o'clock in the evening. 6:30?
yeah, no, yeah, 15 minutes from the train to here should be fine.
All right?
11 o'clock.
Apologies.
11 o'clock is the first one, possible, and then the second is 6:30.
At the district office.
Yes. Thank you.
Oh, we'll make you pay for it later.
Yes, we will.
You had state budget reports on the bottom of that too? You going over those or no?
those are just included in the,
Okay.
that's the actual thing.
Actual part you're gonna send? Okay. Okay, thank you, Chris. Next is public comments. Do we have anybody signed up there?
No one signed up at this time. Did anybody want to make a public comment?
Board reports. Skip that one again. Anybody have anything for the good of the board?
Yeah, I was, I DJ for some of the kids' parties and fundraisers for PTO and things like that. And so they had F&O at Park School, was that last Friday, I believe. And it was nice because me getting older, I don't understand the music as much. So I really now see what my mom was talking about when she said what I listened to. But the good thing was that a couple of young men at the school, about a good 3 of them, they play around with music, try to make beats and stuff like that. And so they had asked if I would let them DJ the last 15 or 20 minutes, and they did. And you should have saw the kids. I'm like, wait a minute. You know, the kids was jumping up, having a great time with them. For me, it was like a half the kids jumping up and down. I'm just like, well, what am I doing wrong, right? You know? But it was nice, and it was nice to see the young people interested in that and get involved. So.
We should do a DJ for our board meeting. We could do it.
Certainly, anyone past 10 o'clock.
Like a
A
YouTube video.
substitute DJ class.
You know what? That's what we should do for like field day or something like that.
Yeah.
The board dances.
There you go. You've been assigned. Anyone else?
We had our first meeting of the diversity committee for this new school year. Was it last week already? Yeah, last week. So good start to the diversity committee for this next year, and some items to try and put forward on action items for how we can be involved in the schools and publicize our diversity policy. There's a lot of school districts that are following us, apparently, and with these particular statements, we seem to be at the very cutting edge of that, according to a lot of people we've talked to. And for those that I haven't had a chance to talk to was it in July that we did this?
Mm-hmm.
David and myself and Paul and Ellen presented to an organization in Lake Zurich, People Over Politics. Yep, that's right. So that was attended by 15 or 20 people roughly, talking about how we went through and talked and had tough conversations with the diversity committee. We've been invited to do a similar presentation at another school district. So we seem to be on people's radars for doing that. So nice start.
On the road.
Nice
right?
start to the.
I had an email today from somebody from that meeting. They were looking for our flyer.
Oh, okay.
And so Leslie did send it to me, and I was able to send it to her. They couldn't find it on the website, so I was able to get it. So they're interested.
That's great.
Look at us, trendsetters.
No, love it.
We had a curriculum committee met this morning, and we're off to a good start, and I think a very good start. Things are well organized from a curriculum standpoint. The thing that struck me is going back 2 or 3 weeks now, but from the first day back, there's a real spirit here among the staff. You pick that up. You pick that. You either see it or you don't see it, and it's one of those ethers that comes over you. I think the morale's good, and the teachers are enthused about what's going on curriculum development, and in-service day is coming up, and they get more done. So far, so good. I'm pleased with what's going on here. A note here, I know it's October 10th, there's this library meeting about the Yingling education. Is anybody, who's all going to that? You?
Paul's going.
I'm going to go.
Good, thank you.
Okay.
I'll try to stop by there also.
It's 10 a.m. on October 10th, Tuesday at the library. Okay.
I'm at work, so.
It'll be my lunch break vlog.
Upcoming will be a summer school report and enrollments, and they were apparently things have gone well, and right at school we're pleased with that, and off to a good start.
No, our policy committee will be coming.
Invitations?
I feel like a copycat, but I attended the first assessment committee meeting last Friday with Paul and company, and I learned a lot. And I'm looking forward to supporting the committee and its work.
And I missed the committee, so I look forward to the next one with.
Ellen?
Well, I'd like to have Leslie come up here. Last Friday, we attended the INSPA, which is the Illinois Chapter of National School Public Relations Association Annual Communication Contest. And Leslie got 2 awards. She got the Award of Merit to celebrate students and staff events, so good at social media. And then this one's a big one. That one you gotta hold, because this is pretty important. It's the Special Purpose Award of Excellence for CCSD46 Welcomes Diversity, for the trifold brochure, the flyers, the posters, and the social media. So it follows what we were talking about. So
Who's gonna take your picture,
Yeah,
Leslie?
we gotta take
She's
Come
on
over,
video
son,
and
check your
she's
picture.
gonna-
Oh, I should
So
get
this
it.
is all across the whole state, so this is, pretty
Nicely done.
exciting.
Excellent.
Yes,
Congratulations.
and she well deserved.
Yep.
We also had a bus incident today, and Eric, you're here, aren't you, somewhere? Can you explain what happened? I'm not putting him on the spot. He said he was gonna be here and he could talk about it.
My cousin's here.
Oh. Oops.
So I mean, just so you know that we had, the bus, one of our PM routes, came around the corner, caught, they had like wooden pylons on the ground, caught that, no injuries, but went out there, checked on the kids, they were okay. Police arrived, they took a report, we did our procedures, we call, the fire department ambulance to come out, they assessed the kids, there were no injuries, but that's just a cautionary, so that was fine. It was getting a little bit warm on the bus while we were waiting, so I had the kids, since there were no injuries, I had them come off the bus and sit on the ground in the shade. It was 90 degrees and the bus that wasn't moving, so that was, parents started to arrive, make sure we got all the kids names. If a parent wanted to take a kid, I had them sign off that they were taking the child with them. Durham had another bus come out, and the kids that were left that didn't have pickup, they loaded on the bus and they completed their route. So, no injuries. Fortunately, I'm somewhat used to, kind of what we need to do and those types of things. Difficult part with our busing. Since we service so many different communities, you're dealing with a lot of different jurisdictions for police and fire, so I think there was a little bit of confusion of where it exactly was, and we ended up rounding cars.
Oh, okay.
What was the accident?
Painesville and,
Indian
Trail?
Trail Road and Elm, there by the
Okay.
lake. But again, weren't too bad, but they get excited over anything like that. But it ended up being
well, thank you, Eric.
Yeah.
Thanks for going too. The only other thing I have is, in September 5th, the Justice Department announced the end of the DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. These are children who have been brought here by undocumented parents, been allowed to live here in the United States. We do have some of those children in our district. I can't tell you how many. The superintendent from District 127 has put out a statement out on social media, and many of the things that are in there are very similar to our diversity statements. I'm not sure whether you wanted us to make a statement that basically these kids are still welcome to be here in our district. I'd be glad to put that together if you'd like me to, but I didn't want to go do it without support from the board.
Absolutely.
Good,
I
all
think,
right,
like you said, our diversity policy says it, but, reiterate it, I think is
yeah.
fine.
I mean, yeah,
Also, I know Mono had did a, presentation, I don't know if anybody participated, I had some of my staff participate in it,
Mhm.
get information, help provide some information. Yes, and I think it was a webinar, so they still may have it, so it may be an opportunity for one of the school administrators to look at it.
Good, okay. Next, I need approval motion to approve the consent agenda. I'll get this right by the time I do it my last time. And the addendum for personnel.
Second.
Northern,
Yes.
Parkinson,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Meskel,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Weedman.
Aye. Next is action items, which is where we would have approved the budget, but somebody didn't put it on there. So we'll skip that, and we'll go to unfinished business.
That's a shot at somebody.
you do see the empty box,
Uh-huh.
right?
I've been by.
Next is unfinished business, so we have an update on the solar project progress.
Well, we're making progress, I can say that much. We are ready to, will probably be ready at the next board meeting to vote on the actual contract. We have been working with the company as well as the villages. We do now have approval to move forward in at Park, so that's
Brown Lake County campus.
yeah, so that's good. And the attorney, our attorney, has looked at that letter that we received to them and said that's a go. So that's pretty exciting. We've got the first one ready. I hope at the next meeting we'll be able to have that on action item, and then we can move forward with the rest of it.
Do we have a copy of the draft contract yet? Will we soon?
We just got it back from our attorney, so now we'll be able to share that.
If we approve that next meeting, how does the timeline go on construction and operation?
We still need to get the paperwork approved from Haynesville, and we have to go through a little bit more process in Grays Lake. We need to go to the committee first and then to the full board. So we may be doing this in sections.
Or any, or,
Until probably spring of next year. A lot of it would be the company's bidding process, and the company's actually coming up with the actual engineering plan to.
we're still looking a year plus out before
I think
anything
we
gets.
may be able to get it done by the end of this especially with Park.
Our campus, they can get a jump start on Park campus.
Yeah.
So we don't have to wait for all of them to start at the same time.
No.
They can piece one in when they have time and as we get the approval process finished.
That's what my understanding is. And we still are working with our financing.
Because of how many moving pieces are involved here, we've talked to them about breaking it up and saying, let's not call it one project for X amount of dollars, let's call it separate projects, because what if we do not get approval for one of the projects? Go, move forward with each one of them.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm thinking as a lot of these kids will probably be putting solar panels on their houses when they get married and start raising a family. It'd be kind of neat to have some information, just take it as we go at each building and build some kind of curricular unit out of it. So someday you may be putting solar panels on your house and here's what happened here.
They already have worked with districts that have that curriculum, so
Great.
we'll be looking to find out what to do. But that will be key to have the kids be able to even measure
Yeah.
how much solar energy is
Is
collected.
there still gonna be a committee on this, or is it?
We
not?
will,
Oh,
as soon
okay.
as we get the approvals, then we'll have some sort of a committee. Tom's already expressed some interest in being on it. Mainly, it's the communication piece, making, getting all that. And it won't be a long-standing committee, it'll be just a few months, but yes.
So for those in the audience, what we're looking at is putting similar to what District 127 did, is adding solar panels into the district so that it would be a revenue positive into the district. While we're going to have a little bit of loans out there, it'll be a net positive income almost from the start to pay everything off, and then it will help us kind of slow down the amount of money we have to keep asking for. So the idea is to have a positive revenue source, a different positive revenue source for the district.
And go green.
And go green. And in theory, like on this roof here, if we get them on this roof here, it would prolong the life of the roof because it's not taking the direct sunlight, which then prolongs how often we have to change it or replace the roofing and all that. So in the long run, there's a lot of different aspects that'll help with the finances for the district.
What company won the bid, may I ask, or is it different companies that won the bid?
Just one company.
We can talk after.
Oh,
Where am I at? Okay, new business. The first item of new business is a discussion of first look at policies.
We have several policies here that had very little change. If you look at 2:260, on the right-hand side, there was a lot of focus on website accessibility. This is new. I did check with our attorney. He said that we do not need to add this right now. However, Leslie and I can talk about what that looks like. Our attorney said that at this point, districts aren't dealing with it, but in the future, it's probably something we will have to consider. So that's the only piece that was different on that.
Mostly language cleanup.
Pardon me?
Most of the language cleaned up.
Yes. And then on the uniform grievance procedure, we needed to change the name and of the complaint manager, so it's myself, Eric, and Paul. And Paul already has worked on that a little bit.
And I have a suggestion. I know you're all gonna love this, but I've got suggestions on several of these. It says after the complaint manager makes a report, it should be sent first-class mail. I'm suggesting we send it registered mail.
We do, but I think it's good to change the wording.
Yeah,
in here.
change it so,
it'll be
I never
registered.
got that. No, send it registered mail,
Now, where was that at?
260. I'm not sure.
The
the
second
end.
page 2 of 4, within 5 school days after receiving a complaint manager, the superintendent will mail his or her written decision to the complainant by first-class U.S. mail. But we do it. I will change that. We
Okay.
do it by registered mail. Good catch, Tom. Anything else on that policy? Alrighty. The next one is one that we're bringing, there's a couple of them tonight we're bringing that did not come from Press Plus, and this is one Chris was bringing to us on operational services. Chris, do you want to explain that?
It's something we've actually, I think, talked a little bit about at the board meeting before, because it seems like we get a lot of these major impact items. It's going to be $10,000, just over $10,000 for a technology purchase. And what do? Do we delay the technology purchase because we have to go through several board meetings? Is there a head nod that goes along with it? So probably about, I would assume it was about 8 years ago to 10 years ago, it was changed from the state level, or at the state level, from $10,000 to $25,000 because it remained at $10,000 forever in terms of what actually needed to be bid on. So the state decided it's time to get with the times. We know that prices have increased. We're going to increase it to $25,000. Several boards ago, while this was all happening, they decided that they wanted to keep the policy at $10,000. Well, we've seen the number of major impact items. Obviously, if we have things that are going to be expensive, they're going to come across you anyways. We're going to go ahead and make you aware of those purchases anyways. So this is just, it gets us out of that language that says it must be bid at the $10,000 threshold. So naturally, I changed it to 25, which would be the state.
Okay, I have a suggestion there, and I talked to Chris about it. He said a lot of the things that come across are 12,000, 11,000, 14, things like that. We all know that we take a good hard look at the finances, and I think we're good stewards of what's going on here. But I would like to change it to 20,000, not 25,000. Chris tells me that wouldn't make a lot of difference to him because it isn't the high ones that are the problems. It's what, 10 or it's 11 or 12,000. We can say then, okay, the state says 25,000 is the guideline. If we say we set our guideline at 20,000, we'll say we're even tighter than the state is, and it's not going to be any problem for Chris, as I understand it. I'm suggesting that. Okay.
Now, I'm gonna play devil's advocate for a minute. In my professional experience, it's good to bid when you can because you can save a lot of money and create competition.
It is. The process is a little bit longer. There's typically when we have something that's a decent dollar amount, we're looking at 3 or 4 companies anyways, and we're saying give us your best.
So do you get so you look at 3 or 4 companies and you'll get quotes from each one of the companies?
We get quotes from each one.
In most cases, take the most responsive and responsible bidder.
You have to take a look at the quote and make sure that the quote is for what you're actually asking for. Sometimes you'll receive a quote and they'll come in and you'll say, well, now this doesn't make sense.
And I was just saying that
Yeah.
because, there's been a couple of situations where we have those similar guidelines, so we don't have to bid it, and I say bid it anyway. Well, get quotes anyway, and then like, man, we saved $500 on it, right? So
We always are looking at multiple vendors all the time. I mean, that's.
if we're looking at multiple vendors, I wouldn't want us to just go to one person and accept their
Oh,
quote.
no. Yeah, trust me, we have the same thoughts.
So yes, Chris is cheap.
Dude, he just called you cheap by saying that I was cheap.
I know,
so.
right? It's all good. And with taxpayers' money, you gotta.
I'm okay with either way. If you want to go with the 20 grand, as long as it's not, I mean, the only thing I would and I know you inform us of these larger purchases anyways, there's nothing in here that says you have to inform us of these purchases that are close to the 20 grand or under the 20 grand. So do we want to put some sort of language of between 10 and 20 grand that we're notified that, you know, not blindsided by the purchase?
I think that's
Good idea.
I'm okay with the dollar amount going up because it seems to go up.
We'll add something in there.
That way, it's similar to what we've already been doing. We still get notified, it just doesn't need our approval.
Yep.
So we're okay, we'll notify the board with between 10 and 20, but we'll keep it at 20, not 25. The policy 6:80, if you look down, because this is an instruction policy, they took out disruptive conduct because this would fall into the behavior one that there's another policy with that. So that's the only change was the reference to student discipline. 6:180, the only change on this is the legal references have been updated. Moving 6:10, it just changed the wording order. So if you look there, it's the same thing, same sentence, but just put in what they thought was more appropriate for clarity. 7:100. This is we have to have, we don't, but the students are supposed to have health examinations performed by physician, but starting this year, they have to have an age-appropriate developmental screening. This is through the state of Illinois. It's not for the school districts to do. At this point, physicians have no idea or no process for this. So our attorney again said, don't put anything in there right at this point. I'm sure that a new policy will come later. But right now, the physicians have no clue on how they're going to do this. So.
I just have a question on that one. There's an October 15th deadline. Let's say the kid does not have the shots they're supposed to have.
Well, the shots, we keep them up. Ours, we actually do September 1st.
What happens then?
Well,
Johnny Jones does not have his shots. It's October 16th. What do we do?
okay, well, we actually did it the first day of school. We had over 400 kids in the district that didn't have appropriate shots. By Friday, we were down to about 12, and now we have everybody. So
Okay, great.
there's a lot of phone calls made, and at registration, we did have available the advocate bus who did quite a few of the shots and immunizations things.
This policy dictates what we need to do on October 16th if we have.
Yeah, they have to be, yeah. All right, one that we are taking a look at a little bit different, 870. Again, there's just some website reference like the first one we looked at tonight. And that's fine, the way it is. No big change. And then the next one is community relations. If you look on the second page, this is about PTOs and booster clubs. One suggested addition to this particular policy. Maybe I'll just read it, maybe that's the best way to do this. The district appreciates the support from our PTO and PTF and booster clubs. Clubs hold a variety of fundraisers throughout the district's 7 buildings. Instructional time is valued, and to the maximum extent possible, interruptions to the student's day should be limited unless activities are aligned with appropriate instructional standards. The district respects the fact that parents, family members, and/or guardians may not be able to participate in activities during the instructional day, which may be disruptive to their child's learning. PTO, PTF, and Booster Club fundraising activities that involve parent and/or guardian participation beyond volunteering or observation will not be allowed during the instructional day. Such fundraising events held during instructional hours may include students and volunteers only. If such events were to occur during the instructional day, were aligned with appropriate instructional standards, and were to extend into family accommodating after-school hours, that then parent, guardian, and family participation may be approved by the building principal. So, are there questions or clarification?
Actually, I have stuff on the first page too.
Okay, well, we can go to the first page.
So, it says in here regarding, express written consent, have we done that with all of PTOs already?
Okay, where are you at?
Second paragraph, parent organizations which cause may be recognized by the board and permitted to use the district name, district school name, or district school name team, or team name, or any logo attributed to the district, provided that they first receive the superintendent or designee's express written consent. Have we done that already? And do we have it on file?
Well,
We should do that.
okay, I'm not sure. I'll have to look that up.
I mean, I don't know, this whole policy isn't new, we're just adding into the policy, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So if this is the current policy, we make sure we're already in compliance
Okay.
with it. That was on the first page, and then the second page. So I think I get the intent behind some of this is to limit the disruption to the instructional day for the students. My thing is, I have trouble, and as a parent who works many nights, sometimes the daytime events are easier for me to get to than the night ones I can't make all the night because of my shift work. And I think there's a lot of parents and families in the same boat, either a split family or where one works nights, one works days, or they might even all work nights for that matter. And I think it eliminates some of their ability to participate in some of these events. That would be one concern there. The other concern would be trying to extend it into day to night hours where it goes from just after school, just in the early evening, is like my kids, there's sports. Extracurriculars here at GMS or Frederick School or outside, swimming, soccer, basketball, whatever else they're participating in, usually happens shortly after school gets out. And we might be limiting their ability, not only the students' ability, but the parents' ability to participate in an event as well. There are no good workaround to this or good solve to this. Those were some of my concerns on the second page.
So, I'm the person who brought this policy to light here. So I'm putting the students first in this one. And what prompted me is being at a Young Authors Day and seeing a child. It was one of the most miserable scenes I've ever seen because his parents couldn't be there during the day. And, talking to principals, I understand that every effort is made for that child to make sure that somebody is there, even if they borrow a teacher or somebody in the building to be there to watch them. And I think you can have activities that are volunteer, that people can participate in those ways in terms of volunteering or observing. I know there are schools that will have a chorus where people can come during the day and then there's a show at night, so you can see both. But I just think about the many, many children whose parents cannot be there, and then some parents can be while this is particularly a fun run at Woodview that really made me think that a fundraiser can be a fundraiser, but we don't need to interfere with that child's well-being during the day. And I think there are a lot of kids affected. And it's to me not fair to the kids whose parents can't be there during their learning day. Okay, so I put the kid first and their learning first. So that's the intent behind this. That's it. So if we can find a way, because I understand that only a parent might not be able to make it to everything, but I'm thinking about the kids whose parents repeatedly can't. And then this is just kind of like adding to that.
Right. How many events are we talking that usually happens?
You know what, to your point, because I raised this with you, a lot of PTOs don't do that. They don't do that. So the difference is you can have the kids run during the day, you can have parents observe, but the whole thing is to make money by having parents register to run a 5K during the school day. That to me, that's not right. And there's no reason. I feel like the ends don't justify the means when only certain families can go. And it creates a have-not within a school. And so I feel, again, kid and learning first. And if you can extend it like St. Baldrick's, where they're able to extend that, that's great. But if you can't, then I think you should find a time that you're not going to disrupt a child during their school day.
I would tend to voice my objection to the change in policy for a couple different reasons. One, similar to the gym. I often, with my career, am not able to attend evening events, and I miss a lot of events to that point, and so my children are often alone at some of the events, depending on what's going on with our family. But also, I tend to look at this as a little bit of a potential overreach by the board in terms of restricting or diminishing the ability of the PTOs to be creative in their ways of enhancing and supporting students. I don't think they don't care about students if we have it in the day versus the evening. I find, at least in my experience with the district as a parent, there seems to be a very nice balance of evening events for individuals to attend, and the few day events, you mentioned Woodview as one of them.
It's about the kids
It's
and
the
a
big
fundraiser.
one. That's the big one. I think the event is about the kids, right?
No, it's about fundraising money during a kid's school day.
Let me finish. I think the ability of the PTOs to have that independence and creativity is something that we should be supporting as a board, because ultimately the funds raised it goes to the school. It pays for the student.
The ends don't justify the means, in my opinion. And I'm standing here for the families and the kids affected adversely during their school day by a fundraiser.
Can you flesh out a little bit more about the adverse effects that you see? Because I've got two kids at Woodview who have participated in a total of 7 fun runs. I've not been to any of them, nor has my wife. You did talk about the family that maybe chronically misses all events, day or night or whatever. So flesh that out for me just a little bit more if you could, because I'm not really sure I'm seeing the impact that I hear you saying. Help me understand it, okay? And then also, I'm not sure policy is the best way to address this issue, but I'd like to hear more about the perceived issue that you are seeing.
I don't think that fundraising events should interrupt a child's well-being during the school day. And
what do you mean by well-being? Interrupt their well-being?
No, their parents can't be there. And I think, quite frankly, to run, I think that, kids are hurt by that other parents can be there and theirs can't. And it's their school day. So I'm just saying, don't bring that to their school day. Protect their learning and protect their school day. Take your fundraiser and have it at a time that is not going to hurt kids.
Gotcha. I think I understand that. I still think the issue is not best addressed in policy, but I understand the issue.
I think a survey would be helpful. I am open to hearing other voices, but I feel this should be policy driven because that's what we're here for as a board. I'm here.
As, I've gone to a few of the fun runs. I think they do a fairly decent job of tying it into some sort of health and well-being for the kids, exercise, body conscious, everything else like that. So it kind of ties into that, like some of this is indicating we should. I think you kind of come down. I think we might be stepping a little bit, only for the simple fact that if you're going to say that we can't do anything during the day because not every parent can be there, then how do you justify it at night?
The policy
Or-
says both.
Yeah, but how do you
Then
justify
I'm
it at
just
night
saying,
where every parent can't be there either?
I'm saying don't mess with instruction, your instructional day.
But they're getting, in my opinion, they're getting some of that instruction, they're tying it into health and well-being and the whole child type of thing that we're
No,
gonna
I
try to
understand that they're
support.
aligning it with the standards.
Right.
Okay, but what I'm saying is, the fact that it does create a have-not system within a school, it does. Kids are very aware that they are different when their parents can't be there. They are excluded. Their families are excluded. So if you can extend it into the day, into the evening, like St. Paul's, do it. I'm all for it. Have it at both times. And hit the instructional standards and everybody's included. There's diversity, but then there's making sure that everybody's included.
I don't think personally, and I totally, we had our conversations about it. I was on a PTO for a while, and so I'm thinking that, like Jim said, if it was health and fitness and tied to our curriculum in terms of, some of our standards that we need to go by based on the state, I know sometimes I can make my kids events that's fundraisers or not, and sometimes I can. I remember they they dressed up like a knight or something like that, where they come and you touch their hand and they say words. I was able to make
Wax museum.
Wax museum, yeah. So I made my daughters and I didn't make my sons the next year, and I felt bad, but my schedule didn't allow me. So I don't know if.
It's not about how you feel, it's about how the kids feel when their parents can't be there.
No, what I'm saying though, but like I said that to say this, that, I don't know how my son felt, right? So I'm not gonna tell the teacher, don't have the event because I can't make it, because other parents may be able to make it. So that's the only thing I'm saying is that.
I think a survey I've been surprised by people who have come out of the woodwork to tell me stuff that I was like, really? So I feel like if we actually conducted a survey, it would be useful to really get how people are affected. And I feel like this should be ongoing at these events. If you're gonna do that, I don't know. I think it should be up front, but at the end of the day, I'm here for those kids and I'm here for those families.
You and I are both in higher education, and I think one of the things that we look at most of the time is data. I think a survey would be interesting to see what to prevent us from making assumptions that are district-wide and trying to get a handle on, what types of opinions or what type of family feelings are out there. I think if you look at surrounding districts, they don't have a restrictive policy such as this would potentially be. I think, again, there's that delicate balance between those of us that can be there during the day and at night. And also, again, I think the PTO's first and foremost concern is the students and the families. They're a supplement to what we do as a board. And I think they should have the independence to have the liberty and creativity to do that within reason within the district.
Within district policy. And I am fine as far as I actually think the language, I would have appreciated your input on the language because you're a good wordsmith.
Nobody asked me.
Mine, well, you weren't on the policy committee, so it was a part of the policy committee.
I think we can achieve it in different ways other than policy, because I think this policy actually takes away.
I do think this is what policy is for. I
understand.
I do think this is what policy is for.
You're not talking
And
about
you can create a policy that is flexible enough.
Absolutely.
But I don't think the ends justify the means if you say, well, I'm sorry, kid, that but we could give you technology in the classroom. Like, it's very important, I think, to protect those children during their school day. Because if their parent can't go at night, that they can be at home or with their babysitter or grandparents, and they don't have to be subjected to it. As far as they're not being included and their family isn't being included because their parents can't be there. And that's different. During the day, they have to be there. And this is a fundraiser. This is not instructional, this is not a part of, this is not young authors, this is not a school-driven thing. And
Do they have to participate in the fundraiser?
It's a PE, yeah, it's a PE
It's a
goal.
mandatory
So yes, they're participating, and then the kids, yes, it's mandatory for the kids, isn't it? It's a PE. I'm sorry, my understanding was this is a part of the PE standards, so what do they do with the kids who aren't running?
Well, there's a lot of kids that can't run. There's other activities. I know, at least I haven't been at Woodview when they ran. I guess I have been once, but there's other activities that they could do other than run.
Some kids don't have the ability to run.
Right.
And, or their health.
Okay,
I'm just,
all right, so we're talking about the majority of the kids in the school are running, and it's a part of this PE standard that is being hit.
No.
And I understand that some kids aren't able to do that, just like during the normal school day, they might not be able to do that.
no, what I'm saying is that if it's not a required, like, for example, if my son comes home and says,
No, they're required to be in the building. They're required to be a part of this event. And if they're not a part of the event, I don't know why not. Aren't they invited in some way, and then their parents are registering to run with them? Or this to me is a problem. I mean, you can't even tell me, oh, some parents are coming and some kids are a part of it and some kids are not. Like, this seems very disorganized.
I think we should get more information because I don't know if we have all the information. You know, I don't know if it's mandatory or not. I don't know if you know what happens with the kids that don't run. Just like moms and with muffins and donuts with dads and stuff.
Yeah, right.
It's the same thing. You know, sometimes I can't make it. Sometimes moms show up for
But
dads and donuts.
this isn't the same thing. This is not the same thing. You can send food in. You can be a volunteer. This is a family participation event during the school day. That's different. That's the difference. And it's during a kid's school day, well, they have to be there. And they're surrounded by families that are not like theirs, that are different. They feel different. They're being excluded. Their families are being excluded. And that is happening to the majority of kids during the school day on that day. And I understand, you know, some parents probably feel really bad about themselves because they can't be there. And they probably feel like they're a deadbeat parent. So that's where I'm coming from.
Okay, so sometimes there's an advantage to having somebody who...
And I'm not the one. I work from home too. This is not me. I work from home 2 days a week. I can be here. This is not about me or my kids.
Sometimes there's an advantage to have somebody who is standing on the mountaintop looking down the valley. And I don't have any kids there. Here's some things I want to know. Are we just talking about one school that has a situation like this?
I believe so.
Okay.
Meadowview has a fun run as well.
All right.
During the school day, or did
Yeah,
they
it's
do it on
already,
the
it's
weekend?
advertised. Do I have anybody from Meadowview out?
Yes.
Okay, and it's during the day, correct?
Yes,
Yeah,
correct.
and it's coming up soon because I've seen the signs out,
Yes.
so.
Is all kids required to be
No.
participant? Can we ask?
I-
Can we ask them questions? Is it okay?
Why is this being held during the school day? I mean, some kids this is a fundraiser being held during the school day.
So we got one school, okay. Second thing is, if the PTO is deeply involved in this,
Parents get
Correct.
permission.
okay. Have the parents can go to the PTO and say, we want this changed.
I don't think
So
parents feel
So I'm
empowered to
wondering
do
why that wouldn't, if that's a problem, why wouldn't they go to their PTO and say, we need to do this another way?
Well, if it's a you know, if the PTO send a note home and say, if your kid want to participate and you want to participate, sign here. If not, the teachers do something different, then, you know.
Why is that
I'm
happening
giving
during the school day?
But, you know, if
Why
it's still part of the curriculum, like health and fitness is part of the curriculums that we teach. So if it's still part of the curriculum and I give my son permission to participate, whether I'm there or not, I'm giving this permission. Now, if I say he can't participate, then the school is required to do something else with him. If I'm not paying and asking him to participate.
Right,
That's
but
the only
then
thing. So that's a family's choice.
That's different as far as you participate. We want your money. We want you and your wife to give us $25 each to register for this race during the school day. It's a big money maker,
But what
I'm
saying
sure.
is that it's the kids, the parents have to give permission to the kids.
Correct.
Right? And if the kid's not running, if the parents don't give permission, the kids don't participate then, right?
Correct.
So
That's still disrupting their school day. And other kids are doing it and they're not, and those kids are being excluded. and it's happening during their school day, and there's nothing they can do about it. And they can feel bad because they're not participating, and their parents didn't have the money.
I think a survey is a good way to go because I don't feel the issue is as severe as you
I don't feel that parents speak up.
Well,
I don't
it's
feel
like
that parents
your
are on,
organization that put
I
on
think
a
the
fund
parents who are
raising
affected are not on these
You
PTOs.
say that parents don't feel like they have any power over it. I mean, the parent-teacher organization is, they are the parents' embodied almost, right?
How many people are excluded from these events? How many people don't even go to these events? Part of our mission is to involve the community, and we're already excluding people during the school day.
But if it's choice, it's, you know, so you gotta look at choice also. Because I can tell my son, okay, is it okay, you wanna participate, I can't make it. And, you know, so as a family, we handle that situation.
It's not about, it's about the parents being invited. It's
I know,
not
but
about your
if
son.
I know, you said it's about the kids, so if my son, what I'm saying is that if I can't make it, I can't make it. I'm not gonna stop other kids or the PTO from participating because I can't make it.
I get it, but you're not thinking about the kids whose parents aren't there. You're not thinking about those kids. It's not just about your
I
kids.
really do. I think some of these events, and if we're targeting certain schools as well, I don't think that's fair either. I think
Well,
that's a
one
big
district,
overreach.
one direction.
Right. But I
So
think-
we should
but I
all be
think-
doing the same thing, and we should
but
have a
I also
policy
think-
driving
But I
it.
also think it's overreach. I really think it's overreach in terms of the parent-teacher organizations are independent organizations that are family representatives that have the right to create these events for the building up of community involvement. You take away these events and you see a decrease
I'm not
in
taking
community
away, I'm
knowledge.
just saying, don't do it during the school day unless you're gonna extend it like St. Baldrick's, then everybody can participate.
But
That's
the
all I'm
family is
saying.
not gonna allow itself to be I mean.
I think we beat the horse to death.
No, and honestly, I mean,
So
it
let's-
amazes me that
let's
people
work
are
with-
like, oh, well,
let's
some
start-
kids are hurt, it doesn't matter.
But that's not the case, Kathleen, and I think you know that.
Excuse me?
That's not the case. We're not trying to exclude anybody. And we're not dismissing anybody's feelings on this, yours or any parents. We all have the same concerns on the whole thing. How do we make it work for everybody? So let's work on doing that.
That's in the language, let's craft it, but let's not,
Okay, let's
Sorry.
work on doing the survey. We'll put together a survey. We'll work with the PTO to put it out.
I don't think a survey's enough. I think you need to actually reach the families who don't attend these events.
I'm
And
one of them.
I would say focus groups, I would say you need to actually really deeply try to understand people, because I don't think people have the guts to stand, I mean, I'm here and I gotta tell you, I can't, it has been very, very difficult for me to be here, to say this, because I understood that I would be the only one who would be standing up and saying what I'm saying. And everybody would tell me why I'm wrong. And nobody's telling me, you know, you've got a good point up here. Nobody's even really looking at the policy, because I'm saying extend it so that we're including more families. And if you can't do that, well, then maybe we should say no, then have it on a weekend or at night, because we want to protect kids.
You also said that the policy talks about whether or not it has any curricular applicability, and I think we pointed out that we think it does, but that doesn't seem to satisfy. Do you think that the fun run is not valuable in and of itself?
No, it's a PE. No, for the kids, it's fine. I'm saying don't exploit the event. Right. I'm saying
I think the first time it was this year that it's been like that?
no.
Every year, the parents are also able to run?
Yeah,
I
and
did not know that.
there's sometimes both parents can go, and then there are all those kids whose parents can't be there. And I'm just saying that's not fair to those kids and those families. It is exclusion. It is creating have-not within the school. You take that element of parents out, and that's gone. They can volunteer, they can observe, they can do everything that they always do. But when you start making it a moneymaker, and you're having parents register, and it really is making it, you're exploiting kids for money. And it's hurting
Okay,
kids.
So let's first put together some sort of a survey, and then try and find a focus group maybe we can put together. If everybody agrees, try and find some sort of focus group that'll come together, and maybe we can see how, really catch the pulse of the community on this issue.
I have a few
So
questions.
we don't
Sorry.
dismiss anybody's feelings, we don't dismiss anybody's being excluded. I think everybody wants to be included in as much as they can. And I think most, in our community, the majority of the parents are involved as much as they can. I think we need to be real careful on how we do some of this, because you could end up taking away almost everything if we make it too restrictive.
No, that's not what this policy is at all.
Hold on.
Most, I mean, David,
Well,
the
hold
PTO
on.
doesn't do anything at David's school during the day.
Okay, Kathleen, hold on. So when I look at my home situation, because I'm one of those parents that can't make everything. If you're gonna say that, and just don't interrupt. If you're gonna say that we're not gonna do something during the day because every parent who can't make it and can't participate, and now we're having a have and have not. When you start looking at the nighttime activities of all the things that go on at the different schools, and there's fundraising that goes on there because the PTOs participate there and they do their bake sales and do everything else along those lines, you could potentially make the same argument at the nighttime for the people that could be there during the day. Well, I can't be there at night. Now you're excluding me, and it's a have and have not for my child. I get it. We just have to be careful that we're not all of a sudden wiping everything off the board and not having anything that
No.
has the ability to raise.
No, at night
So-
sorry, I thought you were done.
We'll take your suggestions of the survey and try and put together a focus group, and we'll work from there. We'll leave the policy out in la-la land for now, and we'll work towards coming to hopefully a conclusion on the policy. So I don't know if it's gonna be anytime soon, or at least we can start working towards it.
I'm just wanting to say the difference, again, is at night, those kids don't have to watch it. And that is, I think, that adversely affects kids when they have to watch it during their school day.
Are you able to, it sounds like you have some anecdotal information from people?
I gave young authors just as an example because, and that's actually driven by Ellen in the district. So, and, you know, I do understand that.
Adversely affected by this.
Yeah, so principals do make the, or not principals, the teachers make every effort to make sure that somebody can be there on Young Authors Day. When they can't, you have a child who is literally fighting tears because their parents aren't there and everybody else's are.
I completely agree, and I know my kid would be, if I missed an author's breakfast or history reader.
Right.
They would notice. Fun run, they don't notice that.
So the difference, though, is some kids, I know it maybe not be your kids, but some kids are affected during the fun run because their parents aren't there, and it's a fundraiser. So I'm just saying take that parent element out, and it makes it very different for that child. And if you can extend it into the nighttime, which is what I believe Kathy Santelli is doing at Woodview, all the merrier. I will volunteer at night for that event. So it's about trying to make it accommodating for everybody, day and night.
Well, my point was just that you can make sure to include, if you can try to include people that think that you're their, perspective on it as well, as we gather data points on the situation.
Well, and I think we need to be careful about how we select that. I mean, I really want to hear from people who don't go to the events.
I'd just like to clarify a couple things. The young authors in the chorus are not PTO-driven events.
Right, exactly.
So are you suggesting, is it being suggested we don't have those activities too? Because you notice.
Why are you trying to make what I'm saying negative?
I'm not trying to make it at all negative, but if we're going to do a survey and I'm going to be responsible to create the survey, I want to make sure that I add everything. And young authors was mentioned. I mean, so that's not a PTO.
No, it's just PTO fundraisers.
And you're targeting PTOs.
PTO fundraisers at the expense of children during the school day, yeah, when they're excluding families.
You're targeting PTO fundraisers when you said one of the things that affected you was this young author. So this feels very emotionally driven.
Hold on.
As somebody who's
We can't have unfortunately, we can't have a discussion back and forth here.
No, we do have a
What we
comment
can do
at
is,
the end.
at the end of our public meeting, we'll have another opportunity for public comment.
Sorry, I
So
apologize.
we can, no, that's okay.
What-
I'm not doing a great job
It's all about the
controlling
fact that a
that.
kid is crying.
What's
I
that?
mean, a kid is crying. Why am I the only person who seems to care about the kids who are crying, or the kids who are upset, or the kids who are
I don't-
brave and pretend it doesn't bother them, or,
That's the case, Kathleen?
No, I don't think that's the case at all, Kathleen.
And I wish you'd stop saying that, because that's not the case. I don't like, I would hate to see a kid crying because his parents didn't show up for a young authors thing. But that's on the parents. That's not on the board, it's not on the PTO, it's not on you, it's not on me. It's on the parents who didn't show up for the young authors. That's different. I understand where
what
you're.
if they couldn't because of their financial situation and work? That's on them?
It's on
So
everyone.
they should feel bad about themselves because of where they work and they can't get
No.
the time off?
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, nobody likes to see a kid cry. So don't tell us that we do. And don't tell us that we don't care about the kid, because that's not the case. If it was, neither one of us, any of us, would be sitting up behind these tables.
Yeah,
That's why
so
we're all here.
it happens during the school day when
That's
we
why we're all
hold,
here.
when we hold
It's for the betterment of the
events
kids.
that are for,
Every decision we make is trying for the betterment of the kids. Every time we sit here. So don't,
we can't exclude some kids while we do that.
you can't include every kid either. It's not gonna happen. We have 4,000 kids in this district, or 3,900.
During the school day, you can.
You
During the
can't.
school day, you
You
can.
can't mandatory the parents to be there. That's the part I'm trying to get to.
Right, but
can't
if you,
mandatory.
the thing is with young authors, it's instructional, it's a part of the curriculum. That's different. I'm talking, the difference here is it's a fundraiser from a parent-teacher organization
I get
that
it.
that is coming in and disrupting the school day. And if you can't do that during the night, and you can't include everybody, then you really are making it so that that child is affected.
I suggest, I mean, I don't think we're gonna come to an agreement tonight, so I suggest that, like, whatever we have to do, whether we table that part of the,
But we're not approving anything.
No.
Just first
yeah,
discussions on it.
well, yeah, so we can come up with a plan, of action on how to deal with it. 'Cause we arguing back and forth for the last
Half hour.
10 minutes or 20 minutes. We're not gonna agree with it right today, so, we're not even approving it today either, so.
Another thing, as somebody who does not have kids at the elementary level, we had open forum and no parents are here tonight to talk about it, if that's a problem. So that hasn't happened. And secondly, I take umbrage at the statement, we're exploiting kids to raise money. And some of the statements made about us here. I
During the
mean,
school day.
I spend an awful lot of time in retirement working with kids and for kids.
It's
Did you have another
not,
question, Ellen?
it's not
Well,
that, it's
the
just the school
survey,
day.
would the board like me to create the survey? And then run it by all of you so that you can take a look
I think that would probably be best.
at it? Okay, and these focus groups?
That's my opinion. Anybody else?
Okay.
Yeah, we need information.
Are in the focus groups, where would I be holding these? So that I can
I would.
reach the most people.
I might talk to building principals.
Yeah, maybe
You can be selective in your samples there.
they would know which parents can make day and night. Maybe get a good mix.
If some parents not willing to participate, they're not willing to participate.
You can also, I don't know how you would do that, maybe not. I want to know whether kids are affected.
And we can.
Why don't you do this? Why don't you think about it, and maybe if we have suggestions, we can work on coming up with a plan of action on how to deal with it, and then say, okay, this is our plan. Surveys, whether it's focus groups, whether it's talking to PTOs, whether it's studying some data from the I forgot the name of the
Focus group, survey?
Yeah, I thought you quoted somebody's data about the effects of kids.
This is, we do have time, it will take time.
Yeah,
It does
yeah,
happen.
yeah.
It's not gonna be done in 2 weeks. Because you're gonna have to have meetings in the morning, in the daytime, you're gonna have meetings at night, focus group meetings, if you really wanna do this to
Yeah.
that extent, so.
And I mean, I don't know, my background as a special ed teacher. I have always advocated for my kids to be included. It's just, I see this happening, and I apologize if I interrupted people and I raised my voice. I just really feel for these kids.
Sure.
All right, next will be the discussion regarding the change in bus arrival and dismissal location at Frederick. Assume this has to deal with the front circle and
Right.
possibly changing the parking lot in the back?
So the village came to us over the summer, over the summer, right before school started, and we're concerned about the safety on Route 83 as well as on Frederick Road when the buses come in and they line up, parents are lining up to pick up kids. It also interferes with bus arrival and departure because there's so many cars parked on Frederick Road that they can't always get into the parking lot. So we began looking at different options at Frederick, and at this point, we're looking at the back lot. And we brought buses in to make sure that we could make them park all together. We can get this, but we're gonna have to make some alterations to the parking lot. So we're in talks with the village about how we can work together to make this happen, but there will be a cost involved with that.
And you wouldn't be looking to do anything until like a summer project?
We're not sure.
It could be.
Depends on, it could
we
be
could
done
move
quickly,
forward
actually.
Before the winter time, if we get it, we're also in talks with the engineer, who's coming up with a plan right now to basically make it so that
So
that
I'll-
mode of transport, that
So
mode of
is that back parking lot, come on, stupid here. Typically, the buses go to the front parking lot or closer to Frederick Road,
Right.
or not Frederick, 83. Is there a difference in the engineering of the blacktop and the thickness of it in the
Yes.
front
Yes.
versus the back? So that would have to be changed in the back,
Not right off the bat, but eventually, yes, we'd have to plan for
usually
that.
as they tear it up.
The biggest problem with the back parking lot is when the bus comes out to turn around,
We're looking at curb cutting.
so we're gonna have to cut out some curb, because we did try it with buses and they were up over the curb and whatever. So then the car riders would go into the parking lot where the buses did, so you've got to have a much larger spot for those cars to be parked, and they wouldn't be blocking.
Because I know for the fire department, our driveways our aprons had to be like really thick. Turning constantly the same direction over and over and over again ends up putting very large ruts into, and it isn't gonna take long with 8-10 buses
More than that.
a day, doing it twice a day. So 18 buses going through it. It isn't gonna take long for those ruts to start showing up. That's why I was wondering if we should make sure we just do it right the first time instead of tearing it apart and then having an issue, slips, trips, falls.
We're under the assumption that we can get through, even if we did it prior to the winter, we could get through and then maybe, instead of trying to rush it, get it done properly in the summertime. Kind of the last thought that we landed on. You know, a lot of it's gonna be timing regardless, you know, whether or not the engineer comes back in time, what's the weather gonna look like? You know, still in talks with the village for the financing piece of that, so,
Trying to get done the first.
yeah. Thank you Superintendent Carell for that.
So that would be my concern is
Right.
tearing up the parking lot like day one.
Is the issue that village raised new? Have you had experience with it before?
We have experienced it for as long as I've been.
There's always complaints from parents or probably people that like to use Frederick Road to drive through.
Me?
Yeah.
And so now we're at a critical mass where the village is saying,
Yes,
do something.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, just cars are starting to back up on 83 in the turn lanes and then 83.
We
And
have-
it actually goes all the way up to Atkinson
Yeah,
Road
it does.
sometimes. Is there gonna be enough room in the parking lot?
There are.
For all
There-
those cars that
yes.
are on those two roads?
Oh, yes, because they'll go on the perimeter of that parking lot, so. It should be.
Well, are we gonna block off the circle? From them being able to go into the parking in the circle?
Well, we should.
Because that's the only way you're gonna force them into the parking lot.
Well,
You,
It's gonna take some training, retraining. Eric will help us.
sure Eric's got great ideas. Put it all on
My
Eric.
idea got shot down from the village right away.
I liked your idea. I thought that one worked.
It's just one you said like twice a day. If you want, in the morning, we would still use the main parking lot as our drop off. It would just be at the end of the day. We could use that back. It's still going to have a wear and tear.
I have a comment on as we repave and whatever. Could we investigate these kind of pavers, that have little notches and where the water can go down between the pavers, so we don't have all these masses of concrete where the water cannot go into the ground anywhere around there?
Like drainage tiles in the
Yeah.
middle?
With all the flooding that was happening in the country in the last 2 or 3 weeks. My hometown, a little town in northeast Iowa, got a big grant, and all the streets now have these pavers that have little notches so the water can go down on the side of every single paver that's there. And semis drive up and down there and whatever. I'm just wondering, as we look down in the future, why can't we be good citizens on that and investigate the possibility of making the parking lots not just one big mass of concrete where the water has to run someplace, or maybe the water can be absorbed into the ground right there. Something to think about.
Put that on your list, Chris.
There, we're good. I'll talk to Keith about it. He's really good about checking with companies. So.
Yeah, especially since we're trying to go green. It's another good aspect. Okay. Any other questions on that? Okay. Next is discussion major impact purchase for special ed. These are.
And Heather's going to come right up and tell us about it.
Good.
Invite myself to the party. You can talk. Hi. I only have 2 major impacts, but I'd like to start by saying they're coming out of our IDEA grant. So it's not local funds. Yeah, the federal grant for special education services. The first one, some history on it. When I started 7 years ago, there was a very large cry for help for more technology in special ed departments and in our classrooms. So I started a cycle of technology fulfillment in special ed programming, specifically out of the IDEA grant. So those materials and products are starting to become quite antiquated. So I'm starting that recycle. I've worked with the tech department to make sure we spec that out appropriately, having Frederick and middle school be our first round. We were able to get quite a nice quantity of Chromebooks because the price is so much more reasonable than our former purchase of MacBooks. So we feel like it's a major upgrade in that regard, and these are really nice units. So that's that first one. The second one, I feel like I'm a little behind the policy that was just passed because this one's under the 20,000. But LLI is an intervention used at many multiple tiers in the reading area for both special ed students, for gen ed students, those receiving instruction from ELL if need be. And it's been used in all of our buildings except for GMS to date. So this is the final building that is going to start receiving some of these materials. So we're just increasing our equity. And it's just a very expensive intervention program, so that's why it's coming to the board.
Where are we with our computer technology plan committee?
We're nowhere until we find out how much money we get from the state for the adequacy funds.
I just wanted to keep in mind.
Yes, we talked about that this morning, that we need to keep that first and foremost in our minds.
We have been moving forward with changing out the technology in the buildings.
Yes.
Putting all the Wi-Fi spots.
Mm-hmm.
So they have been moving forward in that.
So for the infrastructure, right?
For the infrastructure, so that we can move forward
Once we
on
get
the next project. Once we find money. Just for the flow-through grants, this is money that's just comes strictly from the feds.
Correct.
Flows through us, goes out to the vendor. There's
Yes.
no impact to our budget.
Correct, and it flows through CEDAL first, because we're a part of the member cooperative. Yes. It has to be used for special education services and instruction. Just so you know, this is the first cycle of that. My plan is to do 2 buildings per year at the same pacing as the last round. So this is the first year, round 1 of the cycle.
What's the total grant per year?
It's about 400,000. It's increased since the ECAT reallocation. That was part of the agreement that we increased our percentage of the flow through. But to also consider that much of that it covers the cost of our ECAT team and services. So we work that in. So thank you.
Next is topics for future agenda items.
We're going to have a report from Paul and Amanda on our park results. We're going to have action on the performance contract, and then we'll have a second reading of the policies.
Hopefully, update on copiers as well.
Update on copies, okay.
Anybody have anything else they want to?
Somewhere in the next couple of meetings, maybe a summer school report, and I think it'd be useful for the diversity committee if we could somehow stratify what kids, whatever we can do, male, female, group, what kids took what courses.
For summer school?
Yeah, if that can be done easily.
I'll find, I'm sure.
Like demographics?
Yeah.
Like how many in each class?
Yeah, if it's simple, male, female, of course we can do, but.
Okay.
Anybody else? Next is public comments.
Hi, good evening. I'm Danielle.
Okay. You gotta come up, sorry.
Yeah.
Good evening. I'm Danielle Mazurkowitz. I am a parent at Woodview. I am also on the PTO. I am the secretary. So I just wanted to give you guys some background information as you build out your survey that may help you when you go to talk to the parent community. And one thing that I ask is if you guys, or rather a recommendation, if you would please hold off on surveying our parent community until after our fundraiser. It's taking place on October 24th because we already have things in motion. So just from a professional perspective and also just to be respectful, I think that it's best to hold off on sending something to the community as we're in the middle of our fundraising efforts. And just to address some of your concerns, thank you for the feedback. I appreciate it. It's good to hear that information. I did want to let you guys know that we do try to promote inclusiveness amongst the students, administration, and staff. So we hold a variety of different events throughout the year. We have about 7 big events, and 5 out of those 7 events are actually held after hours in the evening. 2 of our events are held during the day, so I just wanted to clarify that for you guys. And then I know there was a lot of concerns about the fun run in particular, so I just wanted to go over some key points for that. So we do have a family registration that is available that gets sent home with students. It is not specific to parents. Any grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, brothers, sisters, anyone is able to participate in that. And we do have a variety of different family members that do come forward. So just wanted to let you know that. Also, the fun run, for those of you that do not know, it is held during the day and it is done by grade. So each grade comes and they will run during a specific time slot. So for example, first grade may run from 8:30 to 8:50 and then they go back to their classroom. So they are not missing activities during the school day throughout the entire day. It's just a very small window of time during the time that their class runs. Let's see. Also, we do partner with administration on all of our events, so we work very closely with Kathy Santelli to make sure that she is supportive and on board with the things that we are doing. And what else did I want to mention? Oh, another big thing that I thought was important that did not get mentioned amongst the board when you guys were talking about just different perspectives of the policy and who it impacts is one of the things that we also try to make sure that we're conscious of is including the staff and the administration. So rarely is it possible for all teachers to be able to attend an event as well, and the fun run is actually one of those activities where they are able to run with their class and we have almost 100% participation with that. So I thought that was important to mention. And there was a lot of questions around participation. It is optional. You do have to sign a waiver to let your student participate. So I just wanted to clarify that as well. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Angel Clark, and I am the PTO Vice President at Meadowview. As a Latina, I know a lot about have and have-nots. So I think that some of the comments actually were, I take them personally. I spend a lot of time at the school volunteering my time, so to hear that I'm exploiting the kids for money is something that it's kind of a slap in the face. I would think that speaking directly to this kind of, to what the policy is, as a parent, as a PTO board member, it does sound like it's overstepping the bounds. It sounds like you're targeting PTOs because these events happen throughout the day for different reasons, whether it's Thanksgiving celebrations for kindergartners or, you know, what have you. I know because I've represented some of the parents that can't be there. The Hispanic kids all know me and know I speak Spanish, so I kind of help them fill that in as they see me around the school. So I think I'm a little confused about what the goal is and whether or not you're targeting PTOs, because that's what it sounds like.
Just to not have fundraisers during the day. And I apologize.
Then that's another issue then, not having
Unless
fundraisers.
they extend into the night hours to include everybody.
Not having fundraisers during the day. I think
Unless they extend so that everybody can be included at night too, which is what Kathy did. Sorry.
If that's the issue, then that's a different issue. It didn't sound like that's what the issue was when it was presented. So, like I said, I'm a little confused about what the issue is and what exactly the goal of the board is as a result. Is it not to have kids hurt feelings? Is it not, what is it? Thank you for your time.
That's it. And I'm sorry, I thought you were motioning to me to kind of answer. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I have one more recommendation as well, just from a data gathering perspective. As you build out your survey, it may be useful to include a question around whether or not a focus group is needed, just to understand whether or not parents would actually participate in focus groups and if that's something that the community strongly believes is needed. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Okay, next, we will need to go into a closed meeting session. So I need a motion to go into closed session pursuant to the Open Meetings Act that are listed there below. Second.
LaCroix?
Aye.
Parkinson?
Aye.
Meskel?
Aye.
Mack?
Aye.
Weedman? Northern?
Aye.